Hello and welcome to another episode from eDub Services. Welcome to Zulu. Very pleased to introduce you to this camper van. This has been in the background of a few of our videos, as you may have seen, over recent weeks and months, and has been slowly ticking away as we've brought her to a level of restoration and electric conversion that you see before you. So this video is going to be all about the journey that this vehicle has been on, not just with us, but also prior to being with us, and the kind of tragic backstory that came with this camper van. And it's so gorgeous to be now in a position to really enjoy this camper, not just with the electric conversion, but also just this absolutely stunning interior. It's a crossover model, so that means it's got a kind of an early bay front and a late bay back. And we'll go into more details what that's meant for our electric conversion in a little bit. But it's also got a South African origin, and it's actually our second South African camper van that we've converted. Very similar style to one of our first ever conversions. So it was nice to kind of go down memory lane with these features. And we're going to go on a test drive. We're going to show you how everything's working all together. But yeah, we're going to look at those different features of the vehicle, go over them all in detail, tell you a lot more about this vehicle and why you should love it as much as we do. My name's Kit Lacey. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode, and let's get on with the show. So when you are converting a classic camper van to electric, or if you're thinking about converting your classic camper to electric, it's really important to consider the two different sides of a camper. So traditionally, the biggest difference between an engine-powered vehicle, classic car, and a electric motor-powered vehicle, is they don't take up exactly the same amount of space. So the actual bit that makes the vehicle move, so the engine versus the motor, the size difference is substantial. So especially considering a classic 1600cc or equivalent engine, it's quite large. It's quite a big unit. Combine that with the gearbox. So you're thinking engine and gearbox is quite a large unit. And this vehicle was designed around that unit, but it takes up a lot of space. With electric conversions, the drive unit, as we call it, which is a motor and a single speed reduction gearbox combined into one unit. So if you've ever seen a Tesla drive unit, or I'll be quite smart and put an overlay of a Tesla drive unit on top, that's actually a motor and a single speed reduction gearbox and lots of other things in one single unit. So like for like, those are the two comparison bits. So you've got the engine, which creates the RPM and the torque to be able to then drive the gearbox and move that momentum down the drive shafts into the two wheels. The other big difference is then, well, how do those two units get their power? So this comes into the refueling angle. So an engine obviously gets its power from petrol. So you fill up the petrol tank, and that petrol tank in the camper van is kind of just behind and under the rear seats. It's about 80 litres, and that then feeds obviously the engine, which then has the fuel to be able to turn and go. Your electric conversion needs a battery pack, and battery packs come in varying shapes and sizes. And the big thing to be aware of is therefore your battery pack, especially if you want some decent range, your battery pack needs to be quite large to be able to give you the range that you need, the capacity that you need to travel the distance that you might want to travel. Now, the easiest place to put it is inside the vehicle. It's a big box. This is a big boxy vehicle. And that has two things. So first of all, it is slightly easier to put it in the vehicle, although lifting it and assembling it is quite difficult. But it kind of gets you out of having to waterproof the box because it's inside. So it's a bit of it's a straightforward way around the process. But it doesn't completely solve the problem. And it also means that you have a massive impact when it comes to interiors like this. Now, this interior is spot on gorgeous. So if we were to put a big battery box inside here, then that has a knock-on effect to everything else. And I would argue that you wouldn't be able to achieve such an incredible finish as you have done here to this vehicle if you had a battery box inside. And that's why at eDub we've been pioneering fully external battery boxes. So if you were to look around on the internet for VW bus conversions around the world, most of them, including our own original Indy, had a battery box inside. But we've spent a long time getting the fabrication systems correct and safe and the right shape and size to all go outside, which means companies like Ken's Customs, who did this fabulous interior, can continue doing their fabulous work without people like us getting in their way. So the gorgeous interior work continues into the front cab as well. One of my favourite things about the camper vans is this front space. I mean, obviously you're spending much of your time in this space as the driver, but you just feel like you've got so much control. A classic camper van like this one, and like the ones that we specialise in converting, is actually no longer, so bumper at the front to bumper at the back, it's no longer than a Nissan Leaf. And it's no wider either. And it feels so much bigger because you're right at the front and right at the back. You're using every spare millimeter of space. And so you don't quite realize how incredibly versatile the vehicle is, but it's such a wonderful position to be sat in up here because you're high up, which is great. So you've also got tons of visibility, especially in this particular version. There are some camper vans that have a bit more kind of paneling in the back or even a panel van style. But this, you've got a full huge windscreen at the front, huge windscreens down the side. You've got so much space and you can see everything, which is really incredible. And then we've added things like our custom dash, which we've mimicked the style. So it's the same style as the original dash that you have in a VW. So it's got speedo in the center. And then we've added your battery state of charge, so your range gauge on one side with a motor temperature gauge, and then an amps gauge to show how much power you are either using or charging. So it will tell you live charge speed data as well. So that means it's got your gear selector. So rather than you having a gear stick, because remember, it's an electric drive unit. So now that's got just forwards and backwards, and there's no physical gears to move. So the gear stick is gone and the clutch is gone, but we have a forward and reverse switch now on the dash. It also integrates the start switch and the high voltage heater as well. But everything else keeps really minimal. In addition, there's things like this particular version has got electric power steering fitted. Now, electric power steering, I will admit, we have done a few conversions on electric power steering, and I've always thought, well, you know, it's a bit of a wuss out. Like, just have some spinach and you'll be fine. It's an old car thing. I always felt it was a bit cheating, but I've become a convert since doing this vehicle. It's been lovely to have the power steering, which is a wonderful system by Lightsteer, and we've used Lightsteer before on other camper vans. It's an absolutely gorgeous, straightforward system, and it now means obviously you can turn it on, and it's just you can glide it. It's one finger turning. It's absolutely glorious. So that's been integrated into the steering column below. And then we've also integrated our high voltage heating as well. The high voltage system that we fitted here is using power from the high voltage battery pack that we've got fitted. And by integrating it directly onto a removable part, which is the totem pole down here, it means you get instant heat straight away in the places you want it, which is on your feet and on the windscreen as well. And it's a little addition to the vehicle, but it's quite subtle in terms of what it brings. The other little change that we've made in the front here, and again, this is available to any camper van owner, is a heated windscreen itself. So this particular windscreen, if you look really carefully, has got tiny little zigzags of heated elements in the front, which is a modern thing in modern cars. But it's a really brilliant system, especially if it's cold, if it's frosty, icy. or very misty. And that definitely happens in a camper van setup. You've woken up one morning, it's quite cold outside, but it's warm inside the camper, and you obviously condensation on the windows. So being able to turn on the engine, or turn on the motor in this case, and turn on a heated windscreen is really great. And again, you wouldn't even know it's there. There's a couple of little wires down the bottom that are adding it, but it creates a really perfect system in the front there. So I mentioned before that we work with select partners to take care of some of the restoration work that we either don't have time to do, or don't have skills to do, or don't have equipment to do. So we have a really great relationship with a local garage here in North Yorkshire called Herbie Hospital. They are about 15 minutes drive away from us here. And we've actually been working with them. They've been helping us on certain parts of all of our projects over the last 10 years. And this was one of those situations. It was a bodywork situation. It was a paint situation. So we contacted the guys down at Herbie Hospital and said, hey, here's some pictures, here's the situation, can you take care of this for us? And of course they could, because they do every time, and they did an absolutely stellar job, as per usual. But what happened, so I got a phone call. So we kind of delivered the camper van to them, left them to it. He said, yeah, it'll take us a few days, we'll just take a look at it, see how it goes. I got a phone call from Johnny at Herbie Hospital. He said, what happened to this camper van? And I said, I don't know. I haven't been told. I just know what I've told him, which is the windscreen's not fitting properly and there's a bit of, damage on the corners. I said, why? What have you discovered? And he said, basically, it looks like the whole kind of front third of the vehicle has had some severe restoration work at some point in the past. But they did a magnificent job of repairing the sill around the windscreen, getting that solid again, getting it painted nice and solid again. And then we had the chance of putting the windscreen back in. While we were there, the other thing that the customer mentioned to us was about restoring a lot of the 12-volt systems. So again, as we went through the dash, so many of these systems were a bit redundant and had been repaired in the past. And I say that because basically someone had twisted wires together and then just taped around them, which is not how to do it. And it just wasn't all working properly. So as part of that process, we did kind of completely change over the dash and get all of the systems working properly again with what we fitted now. And it's an absolutely stellar system. Now I want to hand over to Joss to take some time to walk you through the conversion aspect of what's gone on with Zulu. He's going to talk you through the components that have gone into Zulu and a little bit about the way that we do things with our systems. And it's really interesting if you're into actually the electric conversion side of what we do here. And then later on, I'll be back with you to take Zulu for a drive.
Zulu has been a really interesting and rewarding project for us to work on at eDub. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts about what goes into an eDub conversion, which for starters, of course, you've got your Tesla drive unit, and then we've got a bunch of Cal batteries in this model as well. So that enables us to run at a voltage we require to rapid charge. So CCS rapid charging would be a deal breaker for me if I was to buy an EV. I would look at the fastest charging speed possible, which just makes the sky the limit, really, when it comes to traveling long distances. I can happily say that we are able to recharge this vehicle in under an hour, which is fantastic compared to the 5 or 6 hours that we were running at before. I think the thing I'm most proud of in Zulu is our eDub control board, which I'm very proud to say I designed and developed from scratch, obviously with tons of information and help from the rest of the team and from other parties, from other companies as well. But that takes care of a lot of safety procedures, but of course a lot of just simple fusing situations that needs to go on in any vehicle. So we've got our fuse board from the original campervan stuff right at the front underneath the passenger's dash, but I've got maybe double or triple the amount of fuses I need for the amount of appliances that have now been thrown at this vehicle. So as well as that, we've got a bunch of relays that you might expect, which are all dependent on whether or not the BMS is happy, the battery management system, and whether or not the drive unit says that it's too hot and it adds extra cooling systems, or the battery management system, of course, says the batteries are too hot and that adds extra cooling systems as well. So I'm really pleased to say that it's become a lot more compact, a lot prettier, for want of a better word, and it fits perfectly in the wing over here, same as where the old battery did. So we've got a much smaller battery. That's all that's really required, because it doesn't need the crank to turn a starter motor or anything like that. It just needs a small 12-volt signal to kick off high voltage contactors, and of course to start the process with the battery management system to make sure everything's safe, and then of course close the contactors. And I looked really conceited there. I think one of the major challenges is the dashboard that you see behind me, this bright orange beautiful. When it landed on my desk, I was so thrilled for the customer to be as bold, clearly, as he is, to choose something that obviously matches with some of the trim inside here, and yet something that just screams, this is different, look at me. And of course, as soon as you turn the headlights on, they all light up with bright LEDs, and there's a start button, and there's a gear selector switch instead of the old gear stick. I must give a huge shout out to Declan, who has installed this amazing power steering rack at the front here. He, without any instruction or help, he's just gone and pulled out the old steering column. He's replaced it with this very respectful, I think, and quite tidy piece of equipment that makes it an absolute dream to steer, especially even dry steering on an old camper van as it was an absolute nightmare, and now it's an absolute breeze. And he's installed the ECUs to make sure they're all tucked up and tidy out of the way, and it's been an absolute pleasure to drive as a result, and it makes such a big difference. Your throttle is so much more responsive now because we've got a motor over an engine, and now of course it just makes sense for your power steering to be more responsive as well as that, to make it just, one toe and one finger almost. It's just an absolute breeze.
So the other thing that we have made a big effort to do is to make driving an electric classic camper van as straightforward as possible. So we still use the original ignition. So you just turn that quarter of a turn and everything kind of ticks on. So you see certain things on the dash turn on, the dials all turn, and then it does its pre-checks behind the scenes. So the BMS is actually checking through the system to make sure everything's happy. And at that point, it'll light up certain things like your direction, and it'll light up the start button as well. Before we go much further, safety first, get your old school seatbelt plugged in. So everything's now primed and turned on. So we're just going to hit that start switch, and that's it. It's now ready to go. Everything else is slightly similar. So your handbrake is still manual. So I'm going to put my foot on the brakes, twist that handbrake off. The brakes actually have a brake servo assist. And so if they ever run out of pressure, which is originally provided by the engine, then there's an electric brake servo that's taking care of that instead. The throttle is the same style as the original, but it's now a digital throttle pedal, which just is a lot more responsive. But in terms of driving, let's give it a go. So we're going to flick forwards into forwards, which would be nice. And then I'm just going to squeeze down on the throttle. That's all we need. Oh, and that power steering. You know when you forget? So I'm not worrying about, a clutch. I'm not worrying about a gear stick. Really straightforward. It's a Tesla powered conversion. So E30 kits are Tesla powered, which is really brilliant because it's much better, and I know this from experience, to have a motor that is too powerful that you can turn down than it is to have a motor that's not powerful enough that you can't get enough out of. I'm not touching the brakes right now. This is purely regenerative braking that is actually coming as an off pedal regen. And then if I need it, I can squish down on the actual brake pedal itself and give me a bit more from the brake pedal too. And that gives more regen back into the battery pack. So yeah, we're coming to a standstill here. Going to wait for some cars to move. And actually, I'll show you off the line. This is another big thing that we don't have. So there we go. Straight off. Nice and swift. If you need to get out quick, you can. It's really, really nice. The other beautiful thing that's really great about these electric conversions is a lot of customers, well, a lot of other drivers are going to look at you and they're going to expect a classic camper van. They're going to expect you to be maybe not so fast. So you can get to a position where actually you can scare them at traffic lights and you can set off at junctions quite well. You could be the back of the queue for once instead of the front. It's really, really smart, really fun. And obviously the silence as well. It amplifies some of the other noises that go on in the vehicle. We've still got, you can feel a little bit of whistling around the doors, a little bit of squeaking coming from the actual seating and things in the back, just all the different pieces coming together. You haven't got this big gurgling engine noise drowning out any of those sounds. I mean, there's nothing better really, is there? Sunshine, wind in your hair, roll the window down, just enjoy the ride. And you're not worrying about reliability. You're not wondering whether the engine's sounding okay, whether it's performing okay. Everything you need is straightforward and in front of you. It's the most reliable camper van you'll ever drive. You turn it on and it just turns on and it goes. It's really brilliant. So we're going to pull out now on a faster road, just so you can get you can see what the difference is. Normally a camper van would struggle on fast roads like this. So this is now, foot to the floor. It's not super fast, but it doesn't need to be. It's definitely faster than it was. It's definitely more capable than it was. All that power from the electric motor is exactly where you need it. And there we are, up to 60 miles an hour. We're cruising over the hills. Beautiful open countryside of North Yorkshire. It's a really straightforward system. I love the fact that we can take a vehicle that potentially was a sticking point for somebody, that they didn't enjoy driving it, they didn't enjoy using it, and it's great that we can take a concept like that and we can revitalize the vehicle and give it back to the owners as something that they genuinely will now use and they will enjoy and will keep for further generations to come. That is one of our highest priorities, and I'm so glad and excited that we get to fulfill that for individuals and their families. So we are here with Felix, the owner of Zulu, the incredible camper van that we've had the privilege of working on. And so I just wanted to spend a little bit of time with you, Felix, just talking to you about the journey that you've had with the vehicle, the journey that you've been on so far, and ideally a little bit about what the future holds for you and your adventures. So first thing that I'm always curious about with anyone that we work with is, before eDub even came onto your radar, what was your journey looking like? What was your experience with classic camper vans? What did that side of your life look like?
Well, it's a great question because, I mean, Zulu is my third camper van, third VW T2, and I have bought another one since, California 6.1 VW again. And I just absolutely love the classic campers. I love spending time on the beach with a camper van. My first one I had through medical school. So almost my entire time at medical school, we were going away to events on tour, with my van. And it was the place where everybody pitched their tents, where the biggest music was. And it was just brilliant. And then I had one out in South Africa and drove out the whole east coast of South Africa, from Cape Town all the way up into Mozambique, up to Inhambane, across dirt tracks, incredible, living on the beach, which is wonderful. And then I decided to get Zulu, slightly different because Zulu's not a camper. Zulu's a tin top and an 8-seater, but with 3 teenage boys. I need space, but it brings in the surf trips again and, spending time in a van, driving around, having fun.
Perfect. And obviously the nostalgia of the camper vans is one of the main selling features for those. But I'm going to assume that there were a couple of negatives that went with owning a classic camper van. Just talk us through a little bit of that. Let's not weigh on it too much, not offend them too much. And then what led you to start to consider electrification?
Yeah, so I mean, Zulu is now my third electric car. So I'm a big fan of electrification because it's easier and cheaper and better. I mean, unless you're driving 300 or 400 miles a day, I don't think there's any point having a petrol car, apart from they're more expensive, which I totally understand. But there's a lot of second-hand cars that are quite reasonably priced now. And they're quieter, better, smoother, nicer to drive, easy to charge, and cheaper, much cheaper. And I charge it from home, so I don't have to go to petrol stations anymore. Unless I want a stop for a drink or a sandwich, I don't need to stop. I just drive to my destination and charge it there. So it's really fantastic. So what happened with Zulu was I decided I'd wait a bit, I'd save up, because it's quite expensive to put in the electric motor and the batteries. So running very nicely off a 1.7 litre pancake engine. And then I've done 6 trips in Zulu, 6 big surf trips, and Zulu broke down 4 times. So 4 out of 6, which was not ideal, to say the least. All sorts of different problems. But the last one, basically, I think what happened is an engine seal popped on the motorway on the M4. All the oil fell out the engine, and then it seized. And so I'm looking at a massive bill, probably about $5,000 to get the whole engine replaced. And I just thought, you know what, now's the time to go electric.
So what led you to, obviously you came across ourselves and we had a nice couple of email exchanges, and we had a video call, an opportunity to show you the work that we did and what goes through that. We're now at the end of that process. Zulu is back with you now. What does the future look like from here on? What are you really looking forward to experiencing with Zulu now that she's 100% electric?
Well, I'll jump in and say that I think the process is worth commenting on, because my experience was fantastic from right at the beginning. I mean, there's some really nice guys out there looking at electrifying cars, but eDub stood out. Slicker, easier, better presentation, much clearer about your offerings, and the whole pack and the framework I think is just really, really neat and makes a lot of sense. And your price point's right. It's not a kind of cheap value budget economy option, which when you're doing up an electric, a vintage car electric, you don't really want to get something you don't trust. You want something that's good, is going to work. But it's also, there's some other people out there who I think are charging way too much, and this was the perfect price point for me, knowing I'm going to get a really quality product, but also something that's gonna be affordable and achievable. So for me, the future is just really exciting with this vehicle, because I can now take the kids away. We've got loads of space to chuck all the bags in, stick the surfboards on the roof, and we've got about 100 miles, so not huge range. But I know from electric cars, it's not really a problem stopping and charging. We can easily get to Cornwall, easily get to South Wales, which is where I go surfing anyway, and we can stop en route. My dad's halfway there. We'll stop there, charge, then we'll head on, stop another place for lunch or dinner, and then we'll get there. And one day I hope to maybe upgrade the battery pack when I have a bit more cash, and maybe get a bit more range out there when the technologies move on and when the battery's a bit better. But for the time being, I'm really looking forward to getting down to the beach and just zipping around in a quiet, smooth, beautiful electric car. So yeah, this is the first time I'm driving, giving it a go. It's a bit lumpy because I'm not used to things like power steering, so I'm yanking it around on the corners. And the regen braking is amazing, but totally not used to that in a van like this, which normally takes about half an hour to come to a rest. But it is so quiet and so smooth. Yeah, regen is really good. But basically you don't need to use the brakes, because you just use the brakes to hold it still. Oh, just went over a speed bump. I'm deliberately doing a route with speed bumps, and that was beautiful. I mean, maybe beautiful is a bit of an over-egging it, but compared with before, when it was like just hitting the edge of a hard wall, this is soft and gentle and beautiful. Yeah, the heating's great. The whole thing's warm. Don't even need it anywhere near full. Turn it right down. It's brilliant. It's really lovely to drive.
So we've been for our first maiden voyage. Well, your first maiden voyage. We've obviously taken her out for several testing procedures up in North Yorkshire. But how was that? I mean, this is probably a moment you've been waiting for many, many months. How was your first drive in Zulu now that she's electric?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely something I've been waiting for months. And, it's a big purchase. So I really was worried that I'd made the wrong decision until I took off in the van, and then you immediately know that it's the right decision. I mean, Zulu's just driving so beautifully, really smooth, but with power, but not too much power. It's exactly right. The regen braking is a bit harder than I'm used to, so I need to, because the electric car I'm driving is a bit smoother on the regen. But the flip side of that is I know I'm not going to need to use the brakes. And having had a previous vehicle where the brakes were just awful, I really appreciate that, because I know I'm going to be able to rely on the engine to stop the van in a straight line, and comfortably, and safely. But it's still got that same feel. You got the same driving position, the same steering wheel, same pedal. So everything feels really, really familiar and like it's a vintage car, because it still is. It's still a vintage car with that same kind of lovely, amazing feeling within it. So it's amazing, absolutely fantastic.
So we're looking forward to getting some photographs of you and the bus and the family on the beach, enjoying the future that you have with this vehicle. I'm looking forward to seeing those pictures.
Absolutely, definitely. I'll share them with you soon.
Perfect. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed following the journey of Zulu, the incredible South African T2 camper, and her conversion to electric with Tesla power. If you are interested in talking to us about your own electric conversion project, we can convert the camper you already own. We can also help find a camper for you to convert as well. So talk to us about our sourcing program as well, and we can deliver you something as bespoke and tailored and beautiful as something like Zulu. Make sure you like and subscribe this video, and if you know anyone who's interested in this kind of stuff, or maybe has a camp van, or maybe has long dreams of owning one, then why not send this video to them? Do them a favour. Let them know what we're getting on with here in North Yorkshire. Thank you so much for watching again, and so we will check in with you very soon on our next video. Bye.